Hi friends. Sorry I'm a minute late. We had to get that set up. Let's see. I hope you can see me. Everybody good? Oh, 3. Good. Hi Sam. Thank you. Thanks for having me. I think while people are logging on, I'll just do the 180 and show you where I work. It's a fun space. All right. Hi, Hannah. I think I'll start and let people find their way to us. So I'm going to be reading from this book, and it launches in 1 week from tonight. Lena, you're so sweet for coming. My students are coming. Some of my students are coming. Lena, it's so nice to see you online. I didn't bring my I didn't wear my pajamas because I felt weird about students seeing me in pajamas, so I'm just wearing what I wore for the better part of the day. So I'm going to start with a poem about my hometown, and then I'll talk a little bit about the project, and I'm supposed to read for 15 minutes, and then I'll take 15 minutes of your questions. Thank you so much for tuning in. Hi, Nikki from Wilmington. Let the dead bury their own. 1. The facts are troubling. Scientists conduct mortality studies on Marines who drink contaminated water for decades. Results are said to be forthcoming. Online-based news items include only premature warm weather warnings and a traffic advisory. A disciple asked Jesus for leave upon a familiar death and heard this reply: "Let the dead bury their own dead." 2. After he died of B-cell leukemia, after Agent Orange took what it could, after the well closed, after the shots of pure gold administered at Quantico, 4 years after the government deemed him disabled, after that dehumanizing synecdoche, boots on the ground, to describe another generation of soldiers as if their buried bodies are disposable. Civilians ask whether my father's funeral featured a 21-gun salute. Servicemen know the difference between salutes and volleys, which don't come from guns but rather rifles. This battlefield custom began so the dead could be collected. One side sent 2 shots to cease hostilities, another to resume. They called it a salute to the Union. So these poems are in response to a water contamination event near my hometown on the military base. And I'm going to read one more from this section in this poem is called Baby Heaven. Baby Heaven, the section of Jacksonville City Cemetery occupied by those who did not live past childhood because the water they drank from hoses those humid Carolina summers of the 70s when bath water did the throwing. Because their mothers, ever thirsty as they grew in utero, couldn't have known. Because effects are generational, female survivors should expect infertility, miscarriages, and stillbirths. Search for Baby Heaven and you'll find images of playgrounds, retail spaces with pink and blue, headbands adorned with handmade flowers, rather than rows of headstones marking a lost generation. Okay, I'm going to read a poem that has a Latin title, Via Negativa, which means the negative way. Let white light erase the landscape until all becomes snow or scrimshaw. The present always wants another passing between worlds, more than living and. My body composes its own sentence, tentatively starts and stops. Stop down to allow less light, which is to say, gravity. There are ways to contain a thing without binding it in twine. So I put together a little set list for us. I'm going to probably read 7 poems depending on time. When I started writing this book, I didn't know I was writing a book of elegies, but I had a year where I had a lot of, I felt surrounded and immersed by loss, and this poem is the only poem I wrote during that year period. I didn't really write during that year. I did a lot of running and I did a lot of voice memoing, but I didn't really put the pressure on myself to write a lot. And so the next 3 poems kind of come from that period of time. Theory for the living. My skirt bursts into cloud. Some birds fly away and take with them the land's color. For decades, I imagine everything is left to age and ash. This is not the work of weather. Grief is a color you can't see through, can never quite get to divisions of things. Wasn't I present to close the barn door? How did need escape me? Wasn't there always milk in the air, covering remains until nothing died anymore? Won't the crows come back? Didn't the others come to our aid? Couldn't the maps save us, tell us where? Was this the first time I was shattered, remade into the still of snapshot? I can't say why some birds didn't fly. Can't name one good reason for which things stay. Hi, Diana. Diana Burke is watching from Delaware. Okay. Right. Thank you for watching, folks who are watching. Okay, I lost this page somehow. Okay. This is an elegy I wrote for my father, who was in the military, and he was a crew chief on a number of helicopters. This poem is called Chinook Theory, and Chinook is a kind of helicopter, but also a kind of wind, which I reference in the poem. If you're just joining us, thank you for joining. This is the space I'm reading from. This is my home office. If you look really closely there, you see the cover of my book, which is a painting. And ta-da! Hi, Sarah, watching from New Jersey. Thank you for watching. Chinook Theory. Having made gravel a kind of home for 60 miles of footwork, I imagine my father alive. Each time the park police helicopter circles the Potomac beside the towpath. Imagine how measured the cargo when he operated a twin-engined monster. In the 70s, his silence not a soldier's heart, but shell shock. Near a Marine base in North Carolina, my nephew monitors weather on this side of the mountains. He texts when he suspects changing trail conditions. Careful, Nicole. A Chinook may be coming, by which he means wind. But such a coincidence is not geographically precise. On this Appalachian stretch, a country away from the correct coast, a year since I spent plucking feathers from a hospice bed, were it possible to construct a bird to rise up and greet the dead. And I'm going to read two more from that period of time. One is Grief Theory, and then one is Self-Portrait as Daughter, and then we're going to get to some happier poems in the book. Grief Theory. Oh, my cat. He's sticking his paw under the door. He really wants in. Hold on. We just let Isadora Duncan inside. Grief Theory. Grief wakes me, insists I play your voicemails in the bathroom in the middle of the night. I think I hear your name as I shop for produce. All spring, the figure running in front of me for 20 miles is grief. Just as it stops for water, finally, human-like, I pass it with a sense of satisfaction, only to beg it back when it vanishes. Last week, a friend told me her daughter beat the pillow where the child's father once lay for hours after his savior called him home. Hers is the kind of longing I have come to understand. For 6 months, I have gotten used to the space you made between this world and the next. Your mother tells me she remembers best the days following delivery when you found rest in her arms alone in the middle of a blizzard that kept visitors at bay. Today wind claimed the letter I wrote you the day your daughter was born, 5 days before you died. That night I drank wine, offered a toast to you and the fragile heart that kept you going despite your doctor's fears. Even now, grief reminds me of the silence behind the curtain of your hospital room, the plaster casts of your hands your children will live to fill, a curl cut from your hair gently unraveling. The next poem is called Self-Portrait as Daughter, wherein I imagine myself I'm basically taking Anna's place, and her father is giving me a lesson on how to shoot a gun in her absence, and I had the pleasure of living with Anna's parents for a week while I sort of gathered stories of her life for her kids, which was a lovely honor. But by the end, I imagine sort of conflate my own relationship with my father, who was at the time of the poem, he had already passed. Self-Portrait as Daughter. The only time I've held a gun, I stood in the woods of Western Carolina with Anna's father the summer following her death. I gathered stories for her mother, put on a stormtrooper mask barely big enough for my head for the amusement of her son, agreed to a lesson in country living without changing my blue silk shift and purple Mizunos for Joe. Surprising was the Remington's weight, the .22, my target a 20-gallon bucket box, and the number 2 he invited me to kill before the first fired bullet pierced the cardboard with a certainty like death. Joe collected the shell while I examined the digits' hollowed hook. 3 times today I've passed the folded flag a soldier delivered at my own father's funeral. 2 salute shells, 1 small black matte urn of his ashes my mother wanted for me. I recall the echo of the rifle's final round, so much like my father, the volley I could feel coming, still reason enough to flinch. All right, let me do a hi Melanie. So sweet of you to log in, or Gail, whoever's logged in there. Thank you for joining me. My phone is propped up with my iPad, so I have to touch my iPad to get a sense of what time it is. I'm going to read one more, and then I am happy to answer whatever questions you have. I'm going to end on an elegy. I'm going to end on a sonnet, which may be the only happy poem in the book, I'm sorry to say. One of the happier poems in the book. So this one is for my partner, John. Intimacy Theory. In light of the river, the way it turns, first a gathering of ice, then snow building a false start of the river's edge. Tell me what's empirical. Winter at my back, all season, snow turns to rain in my hair. Tell me how many times today my body has worked against itself. Thinking of you is something like breath, a slow release of time built up in my mouth. When there are no words, no idiom will do. Tie the knot, tie one on, cut ties, tongue-tied. You are anything but an obstruction. You are everything, if not each moment before. Oh, transitivity. Oh, verb waiting to be. So yeah, how to prove a theory. Thank you for joining me. I really would love to answer your questions about anything. Asked on my Facebook wall. Thank you. All the love hearts. Oh, you guys are so sweet. Thank you. I said on my social media that I would answer questions about poems or ice cream, so feel free to ask me anything you wish. I hear there's a delay, so I just need to be patient before signing off. What are you working on now? Is that Asha? It's Isidore Duncan. Is not the most attached cat. But she loves me now because we got a dog and she hates the dog. What are you working on now? I'm working on a new project, but I don't know what it will be yet, and I probably won't know for the next year. I'll just sort of write. Nicole asks, I'll just sort of write, and then I'll try to figure out what is a trajectory or an arch that I seem to be concerned with, but I'm really just letting myself write whatever. I think the world isn't the happiest it's ever been, and so I keep trying to write happier poems, and I keep failing. But my personal life, I'm quite happy, and that's nice, so there are lots of possibilities. Lena asks, what was the muse for your book? And then what is your favorite poem from your book? I love the favorite poem question. My favorite poem is this poem called Predilection, and it is after Marianne Moore, who's one of my very favorite poets, and it's actually a form, so it's called accentual syllabic, so there's a pattern with the syllables from one stanza to another. If you look down, the first line is really short, the second line is longer, but there's a pattern to all of that. And when I was in graduate school, I would give myself a lot of assignments to try to finish a poem. And this was just one assignment that I gave myself. What was your muse for the book? I was just writing and trying to turn what was essentially an MFA thesis into a book that other people cared about. And so I sent it out for a long time, and it didn't have much of a focus. It was just kind of like a poem about this, a poem about that. And then I had this difficult year, 2013. It was difficult for me and for the people I love. And my brother-in-law died on a Thursday, and my dear friend Anna died the following day on a Friday. And trying to figure out what to write after that, it just sort of fell in place that I ended up writing a book of elegies, and that the book really mines not only the individual situations surrounding those losses, but also the result of trauma, which is silence, and trying to mine that silence, both in terms of communal losses, like the water contamination event, familial losses, but also, loss of one's voice, times that I felt silenced in some way. So the book sort of looks at loss and silence from a lot of angles. There's a poem in the book about a student of mine who came back from war with PTSD, and so that situation sort of fit the situation of the book, I think. When did I start writing poetry? I wrote my first poem for my friend Anna, and she was sick in college, and the very first time I took a creative writing class, I think I was a junior in college, so it was maybe the year 2000. So it's been 17 years ago, and it was about being bald, because when my friend Anna, who the poem Grief Theory is about, when she got cancer, when she was diagnosed with cancer, I shaved my head, and I wrote about this process of being bald and how it felt. And it was a terrible poem. Anna loved it, but it was I saw it recently, and it's pretty bad. And I didn't start off a gifted poet, but thankfully I had a very patient mentor named Alan Michael Parker, who was really lovely, and who told me I should stay in Davidson after undergrad to keep working on my portfolio of poems for graduate school, which I did. And I became a middle school teacher. And then a year later, I went to graduate school and I studied poetry. I wrote a few poems in grade school, but I never really thought much of it. But I also wrote a little book in the first grade about an ice skater that won a prize for the state of Indiana. So I think I've always had a storytelling inclination, but I sort of favored science and math in classes, and I went to a school for kids who have gifts in those areas. So I think I'm one of the only poets at the reunion, if I'm right. Other questions? I think we have like 5 minutes. Thank you all. You're so good, so sweet. Sam says, how do you find inspiration, and when do you feel tapped out? I read, and that is a great source of inspiration. I prefer writers who read. Right now I'm going to show you the stack I'm reading. And there's this great poetry magazine from 1967 that I was reading today. I'm going to grab it because it's so good. It was a gift someone in an online group sent to me, and it's Poetry Magazine, volume 111, number 3. It has gems by George Oppen, Lorene Niedecker, William Stafford, just so many great things. So I love to read and broaden my vocabulary or the possibilities for the poem before I even get started. Sometimes I make a word bank and say, I have to use these words today. So I'm a geek poet and I like to make little assignments. And when I feel tapped out, I usually go for a run. And then when I run long distances, and when I'm running distances, I'll turn on the voice memo feature of the iPhone and record little fragments until the fragments kind of find a bit of music, and then I'll sometimes stop if I'm really getting into it and finding the poem. Then I'll, stop running so that I don't trip or die or something, and just take a minute and find the line that seems to be kind of recurring and coming back. So I do a lot of writing while I'm running. Do I experience unexpected healing through the process of writing this book, or the process, or the writing process in general? I was watching this video with my students of Reginald Dwayne Betts, and he says at the end of the video, of the little video clip, which was on PBS, that writing is like breathing, and I do feel like it is that instinctual, and I have to write. So whatever little time I have in a day, I teach a 5-5 load. So I have 100+ students a semester, and it's very stressful to try to find the time. But I'm one of the first people on campus, and I'm at my office by 7 in the morning, and I open up my computer, and I don't have my first class until 9:30. So I take a lot of time in that 2.5-hour period to read and to write, and not necessarily try to finish a poem, but mostly just to kind of open up the possibilities for what I want to explore, what I'm thinking about. I'm going to take one, I think it's almost time, so I'm going to take one last question from Darren, who is a wonderful cheerleader. Hi, Darren. Darren says, hi, Nicole, your book is in my stack, so well done. How does elegy and humor work best for you when it does? Yeah, it is hard to find the humor in elegy, but it's also necessary. And so for me, I think the best parts of this book are the sort of moments of unexpected where you laugh out loud, or I hope you do. And one of those times is where I talk about my dad's advice for moving across country. And I was literally asking myself the question, how do you know whether to sell your material possessions and go by car, or how do you know when to buy a truck? Like, what's worth it and what's not worth it? And he just said he had a camper and I should go park it at a Walmart until I get my shit straight. And so I left that language in the book, and I think, if someone is exploring this book and they're reading about, one death after another death, after like a whole community, a generation of children who were never born, it's really important to give that release and that opportunity to breathe. And there are 6 places in that book where I'm kind of questioning. They're called hypothesis poems, and all I'm doing in those poems is really asking questions. But then there are also moments like that where I hope people sort of laugh out loud. It's a great question. I love the Kevin Young book, The Art of Losing. I was just showing it to my class this week, and I think the elegies that do sort of subvert the process of mourning, because there's grief, which is what we feel, and there's mourning, which is what is more performative. And I think the sad clown is sort of a comment on that it doesn't have to be all terrible. It can be some absurdity along the way. Thank you, everyone. Thank you so much for joining me. I hope you'll let me know you were here, and I hope you enjoyed a peek at the book. Thanks.